Hello and welcome to Gossip Finance. So, Supreme Court came out with their ruling on the immunity case for President Trump's immunity, or former President Trump's immunity case, and sure enough, they punted it back to the courts as we predicted. But they also said, yeah, presidents are pretty much immune. So, big win for Trump. Big win for Trump. Looks like his Mar-a-Lago case now. That judge Eileen Cannon, who's been kind of ruling in his favor, she's a Trump-appointed judge and a big Trump supporter. Now she's got basically carte blanche to dismiss that case. As far as the D.C. case, it's a lot of this is going to get punted back to Judge Chutkan, who she's going to have to deal with this. She'll probably issue a ruling, do a hearing and issue a ruling within a couple, 2-3 weeks, my guess. But the problem is even after that, she's got to kick it back to the Supreme Court. So that case isn't going to be here until sometime next year, if at all. This also puts a big dump in the Georgia case because it challenges what types of evidence can be presented in that case. So we'll kind of look at what happened here, but the good news is congratulations to President Biden. You are now officially a king. You can do whatever you want with no no repercussions, thanks to Donald Trump. So I want to kick over. We're going to kick over real quick to just watch a little clip on this from MSNBC, and then we'll kick over to sort of Fox News, just to give you sort of a comparison of how they looked at it. They both did a decent job, though. I'll give them that.
Yeah, Katie, I think the analysis here has been spot on. You know, the decision goes a long way to say that the president is not above the law and that private acts, unofficial acts, are not immune. But if you look at what the implications for Jack Smith's indictment of former President Trump, they appear to be dire, because there's a whole section in the indictment about Donald Trump's efforts to enlist the Justice Department to allegedly falsely proclaim that there was fraud in the election, write letters to states. That is completely out, according to this decision. And then you get to his conversations with Vice President Mike Pence, which are a key part of the indictment. This decision says that there's a presumption that those are immune, but that prosecutors could seek to rebut that in the lower courts. And then it also says that his public statements, the public statements of any president, are largely immune. And so the speech at the Ellipse, any social media, the tweets, the Truth Social posts by Donald Trump about January 6th, that is largely out of this case. What is possible?
So, just to simplify that, they broke it into basically 3 different categories. Okay, so category 1, anything listed in the Constitution. So, like, for example, the president's pick ambassadors, things like that. Those are in the Constitution. That's listed under Article 2, the Constitution, on the executive branch. So, all that, total immunity. Anything the president does regarding that is immune. So, if I'm the president and, let's say, I'll use my little guy here, my little buddy Grogu here wants to be an ambassador, and so he says, well, Duncan, I know you'd had that weird sex act with the porn star thing, just like Trump, and I'm going to make it public unless you make me an ambassador. And he blackmails me, and I make him ambassador, even though what we did is illegal in any other circumstance, because I'm president and it's under Section 2. Him blackmailing me, bribing me, whatever illegal thing he and I do together, I'm totally immune. So I can make him an ambassador to wherever, China. It doesn't matter. So all that. So that's one we could argue over. Category 2 is official acts. So under official acts, you get presumption of innocence. So anything that's official under the government, we're just presuming that you're totally immune and you're innocent of any crime. So if like in that case, he said, okay, Trump ordered the DOJ to try to drum up a fake election scandal and election fraud cases that didn't exist. That would be, we'd presume he's immune from that. So you can't bring that as evidence. Any discussion he has, so like with him trying to tell Mike Pence, I want you to overthrow the election or not count the electoral votes, any discussion that presumed immune, so you can't present that as evidence. So it's basically, he's presumed innocent, so what it basically is, he could be committing crimes, and he could potentially be prosecuted, but you can't bring any evidence against him. So it's one of those things where it's like me saying, it's illegal to rob the bank, but if you rob the bank, I can't use any witnesses or cameras or photographs or audio recording. I can't use any evidence to convict you. So you rob the bank, and then I try to take you to trial and say, hey, this guy robbed the bank, but I can't present any evidence that you robbed the bank. So what is the jury going to have to find you not guilty? Not that that case would ever be brought anyway, because I have no evidence. Right? So I can't even prove that you committed the crime. So that's kind of what Category 2 does for official acts, is they basically say you can't use anything against them. Then they talk about unofficial acts, things that don't involve the presidency. You could potentially be, once again, prosecuted for that, but that would have to be like something you were doing outside, because you can't bring any evidence from any official characters. So if I'm breaking the law as the president, I'm doing, we're overthrowing the election and I'm using my chief of staff, right? Well, you can't bring any evidence about the chief of staff. Anything I said to him, any records between us, any conspirators, and any plotting, none of that. You can't bring any of that, because I'm presumed under an official act to be innocent. So that's the narrow guise of what they're doing. Now, this will get kicked back because there are unofficial acts and things like that he is definitely going to get tagged for, and some of that doesn't necessarily apply to state actors, right? This is just a federal ruling, right? So we'll see. It'll come back and forth. All this punts all these cases pretty much till next year, which is what we figured the Supreme Court was going to do anyway. And a lot of that's because it's a very conservative Supreme Court, but Roberts, Alito, and Thomas are all looking to retire. And Roberts wrote the ruling here, and they would like Trump to be president because they'd like a conservative to be put in their place, as opposed to Biden, who's going to put somebody who's more moderate. So that's a lot of what's pushing this here. Now, this was Fox News reporting on it. They don't do a bad job, but you could see there's the fingers on the scale about how to spin this a little bit. Now that I've explained it, so you can just get a sense.
You there?
Yes. Yes, I am here, if you can hear me. Let me read you a little bit of what we have from the court. It does find this. Under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. He is entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. There is no immunity for unofficial acts. That's the first blush we've got on this. It looks like a 6-3 split. We've got the dissent by Justice Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson.
So she doesn't really get into it. MSNBC, he did a better job, a little bit more prepared. So let's get into that, though, what she's talking about. Well, unofficial acts, no. Yeah, okay, so let's say, hypothetically, President Biden decides, well, look, see, Trump has been threatening government officials, and he has. That's a fact. These things are fact. And President Biden says, you know what? I'm just going to declare him a domestic terrorist and take him into custody. No trial, nothing. Just take him into custody, black bag him, throw him into a black site, not disclose where that is. And we'll just say to everybody, we're interrogating a potential terrorist. No, don't say anything. Whatever. And he does that. Well, if he hires like me to do it, who's not a government agent, and I go do it, not that I would ever do anything like that, but let's say I did, that would be an unofficial act. That he doesn't get a presumption of immunity. So that would be a criminal act. But if he tells the Department of Justice, the Secret Service, and the FBI to do it, and they do it, well, that's an official act. So he's presumed to be immune. So he could do that. He could do that right now. In fact, Biden could go out and just illegally seize and make public all of Trump's tax records. He could seize court documents that are sealed about Trump's alleged rapes. Make all those public. And there's nothing we can do about it. It's presumed to be an official act, provided he's going through official offices. So as long as he's using taxpayer dollars to commit his crimes and taxpayer personnel, it's all good, man. It's all good in the neighborhood. So this is just really horrific what they've done. I wanted to clip to this too. So here's an article where it's basically, hang on, let me scoot that there. All right. So historians, legal experts express dismay at the Trump immunity ruling. This is where is this from? Roll Call is the name of the website, rollcall.com. So basically, historians and legal experts warned Monday that Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling opens the door to dangerous abuses of power and strikes against foundational American principles of accountability under the law. Michael Waldman, president of the Brennan Center for Justice and author of several books about the country's legal landscape, said there's reasons to be nervous when it comes to the prosecution of a former president. And standards would make sense. Oh, and some standards would make sense. Okay. Here, though, the court has issued... let me get to this. Here, though, the court has issued an instruction manual for law-breaking presidents. Waldman said on social media, make sure you conspire only with other government employees. You'll never be held to account. See, that's basically it. You're immune as long as you're conspiring with other government employees. If you're doing it with somebody else, Joe Blow in the street, then it's a crime. All right. Presidential historian and author Michael Beschloss was among those who referred to the idea that the decision cut against the intent of the nation's founders. Thanks to the Supreme Court today, presidents in the future will have access to far more unaccountable power than they ever had in American history. Founders wanted a president, not a king. So basically, that's the thing. And part of that, to understand the president, not a king bit, is it used to be like in England and Europe when we rebelled, when we had a revolution. The king was above the law. The nobility was above the law. It didn't apply to them. They just made the law, had their people enforce it, and it didn't apply to them. They could do whatever they wanted. The idea behind this country was the law would be supreme. The law would reign supreme in this country, right? And all men are created equal. No one's above the law. Well, that was the whole point of that statement. So even the president should be held accountable to the same law as you, me, everybody else. Now they're saying no. Not when he's president, and is not as long as he's doing it with other government employees. Anything he does is legal. So it kind of kills the whole vibe of what we're talking about. And when you go through it, it got really dire, and it was 6-3. It was the 6 conservative justices versus the 3 liberal justices, and Sonia Sotomayor wrote the dissent here, and I just want to look at it for real quick. So, and I hope you guys can all see that. Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger. There we go. Let's fix that there. All right. So, the dissent was written by Justice Sotomayor, with Justice Kagan and Jackson joined her in the dissent. Okay. Today's decision to grant former presidents criminal immunity reshapes the institution of the presidency. It makes a mockery of the principle foundational to our Constitution and system of government that no man is above the law. This was kind of the point I was just making. Relying on little more than its own misguided wisdom about the need for bold and unhesitating action by the president. Ante 313, the court gives former President Trump all the immunity he asked for and more. Because our Constitution does not shield a former president from answering for criminal and treasonous acts, I dissent. So the Constitution doesn't shield them from this. And she goes on. This is, it's long. You guys should read the whole thing. The indictment paints a stark portrait of a president desperate to stay in power the weeks leading up to January 6th. Then President Trump allegedly spread lies there had been outcome derivative fraud in the election and that he'd actually won. And that's where this whole thing begins. And she's talking about, the bottom line is we've thrown out the Constitution. We've thrown out the entire principles behind this, which were, and I get why the conservative justices don't like it. I mean, the country itself is founded on liberalism, and I've had people argue with me, no, it hasn't. It is. You can look it up. John Locke wrote Second Treatise of Government. Our Constitution's pretty much a ripoff of that book that he wrote, and Adams and Madison and all those guys cite him a lot, Jefferson a lot, and basically the concepts in that book he develops 2 concepts. One is liberalism, the idea that law applies equally to everybody, right? And the other, that's what liberalism is, that everybody gets treated equally under the law. That's at its core. And he comes up with the second concept of capitalism. The idea that people can act, instead of like the king owns everything or whatnot, that individuals can own land, property, shit like that, without the need for a government to tell them they can. But yeah, that's the premise of it. But yeah, really devastating stuff. Basically, let's see if I can find this last little bit. But basically, they're basically saying they're scared for the democracy. that was basically what Sotomayor and Jackson and Kagan all basically said. That they think it's pretty much, you know, I mean, it's pretty much the end, the end for all that, because you're basically saying the president is king. So here it is. I got it right there. So this is the last page from Sotomayor's dissent, where she writes. I'm just going to skip to the last paragraph here. Oh, right here. Never in the history of our republic has a president had reason to believe that he would be immune from criminal prosecution if he used the trappings of his office to violate the criminal law. Moving forward, however, all former presidents will be cloaked in such immunity. If the occupant of that office misuses official power for personal gain, the criminal law that the rest of us must abide by will not provide a backstop. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. I mean, that's pretty horrendous when you think about what she's talking about at the end of this. She's talking about this might be a situation that could be the end of how we view ourselves democratically. And to get further along with why this is dangerous, I've got one last thing I'm going to show you. So this is just an article from Crew where they talk about Trump has threatened dozens of times to use the government to target political enemies. And then it goes on to Trump. I'll read it for you. Trump has repeatedly promised to weaponize the federal government during a second administration by pursuing revenge, retaliation, and retribution against his political enemies, because Trump is posting primarily on Truth Social, his newly public social media company with only a niche following. The extent of his threats have mostly flown under the radar. Trump's attitude can be summed up in one Truth Social post on August 2023. If you go after me, I'm coming after you. So Trump's actually been actively threatening government officials and threatening other people. So if he becomes president and he attacks these people and puts them in prison and, you know, orders the Department of Justice to go after all these people without real cause and to trump up evidence and to make shit up, that's all legal now. He cannot be held accountable for that. He's immune. That being said, the question now is, Biden can do all this. And the question is, what's Biden going to do? I'm not comfortable with anybody being able to do this. But honestly, if it comes down between those two guys having that kind of power, you know, I got to go with Biden, because Biden's not threatening to do any of this shit. Trump is. And now we know that there's no repercussion for it. You know, take it or leave it as it is. But that's just sort of the bullet points, what you kind of need to know going forward for, you know, water cooler conversations, just to get a sense of what's happening. But it's basically the three things, which is anything under the Constitution, immune. Anything that's official act, you're presumed immune, so they can't ever bring evidence against you, so you're effectively immune. Unofficial acts, you're not immune. But what those are, we still have to determine, and that's been kicked down to the court. And so we'll see how it all plays out from there. But that's it for that. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was helpful. Please like and subscribe and everything. Email us if you want to come on the show, or if you have clips or things we want to do. We're happy to have anybody on who wants to have a discussion or debate or anything like that. Please let us know. You can email us at gossipfinance at ad@outlook.com. It's down below. Thanks for joining me. Hope you guys have a great week. Otherwise, we'll see you soon.